Okay, everybody, this is the last video of this week's assignments. And this is a video in which I'm going to show you an example of the kind of things that I've been talking about in the two previous videos. So in previous videos, we've talked about your assignments for this week, and they focus a lot on revision, and specifically you're being asked to revise a paragraph. I'm going to give you some other external videos about thesis statements that were done by other people and one that was done by myself. That's one that I did as well. But this is about the revised paragraph portion of your assignment. So if you go back to our assignment details, you'll notice that part two is to choose a body paragraph to fully revise. And to explain your revision in part three. And you can also see those assignment details in Moodle as well. So I wanted to give you guys an example of that. So this is an essay that's on page 122 and 123 of your textbook. But as you can see, I've posted it up here as well as a PDF so that you can see it and kind of follow along with me. I'm not going to read these to you. So what I'd like you to do is either utilize your textbook or utilize this screen and pause the recording very quickly. And if you can't, push pause and also read the screen, this is available in the presentation PowerPoint that's been uploaded to Moodle. You'll be able to see these. And what I'd like you to do is pause the video and read through this paragraph, which is the first draft, and this paragraph, which is the second draft. So this is an example of a revised paragraph written by a student. And if you've already done the participation assignment for this week, you're going to recognize this because it's the same essay. So this is the essay that you're going to be answering some questions about. And this is just a particular paragraph from it that the student decided to revise. So I'm going to talk about several different things that I think are successful about this student's revision and that pinpoint some issues that I see a lot in student writing and that you might want to consider in your own revision. So the very first thing that I want to do as a reader, so hopefully you've paused, you've read the paragraphs, and you've come back to the video. The first thing we want to do as readers is determine what is this author telling us is the topic of this paragraph. Anytime you read something, try to figure out what that person is trying to tell you. That's what your readers are going to do when they read your essay. So you as a reader should say, what's up with this? What's this person trying to tell me? And a lot of times you're going to find that information in the topic sentence. And usually that's the first sentence in the paragraph. Not always, but usually. For now, that's the rule we're going to go with. Excuse me. And here in her first paragraph, she says, reality shows that followed Survivor didn't have the interesting elements that it had. So it sounds like her paragraph is going to be arguing that Survivor, the reality TV show that was started many years ago, I think I was still in high school, so a long time ago, that those shows, that have come after it were not as successful or not as good. They weren't as interesting as Survivor was. So that's the argument she's going to be making in this paragraph according to her topic sentence. So the next thing I'm going to do as a reader is I'm going to determine whether she proves that or not. So let's look at her follow-up sentences. In the sentences that immediately follow her topic sentence, she starts to list a lot of information about Big Brother. She says it started as the first of the reality TV spinoffs. So in other words, it was the one that immediately followed Survivor. But audiences didn't have the same things to respond to. So come over here really quickly. This sentence, audiences didn't have the same things to respond to, is pretty vague. So already, I don't really know what she means. I get one sentence beyond the topic sentence and I don't really know what she's talking about. What do you mean they didn't have the same things to respond to? So she, as the writer, knows what she means. She has all these ideas in her head about what was so great about Survivor, but she can't count on me as the reader to know what those things are. She has to tell me. So in the revised paragraph, she actually does this. If you'll go back and look at the revised paragraph, she says, Big Brother was the first spinoff reality TV show to try to repeat the success of Survivor. So she's more specific about what it did, what she means when she says it was a follow-up. But it did not offer the drama, exotic location, or $1,000,000 prize that Survivor did. So, bingo bango, as one of my very elderly teachers used to say, there's your answer. She's made it less vague. In her revision, she provides specific detail that you as the reader can hold on to and say, oh, these are what you're going to say about the differences between Survivor and Big Brother. You're going to tell me how it is that Big Brother didn't live up to these expectations. So that's thing number one that I wanted to point to about her revision. So in your revision, you might want to ask yourself, do I have any sentences that need to be clarified that are a little bit vague? Such as when this girl says, didn't have the same things to respond to. And you have to think pretty hard as a writer to figure out what those sentences are. But I want you to pay careful attention and think about, if I didn't know anything about this topic, would any of these sentences strike me as a little bit vague, as needing more detail, more specificity? So there's an example of that. The next thing that I wanted to point out is, and I have a slide for it over here, the first draft of the paragraph reads to me a little bit like a list of facts about Big Brother. So if you come back over here to this first draft, she follows those sentences up. She says it has never been a success because they took the basic concept of Survivor and added nothing new or interesting. Big Brother locked up a bunch of people in a house. Here's what Big Brother looked like. It's just sort of a list of facts. And the other thing I want to point out is that those first couple of sentences, all she's doing is making claims. So she hasn't actually provided me with a ton of detail yet. She's just provided me with claims. She said, Big Brother didn't give audiences things to respond to, and it's not been a success because it didn't add anything new or interesting to Survivor. Those are all interesting points, but if you're going to say that stuff, you have to back it up with details. So the other thing I want you to do is to make sure that you have paragraphs that aren't just a series of claims. Don't just throw out a bunch of ideas and not back them up. She needs to back them up. So ideally, she should have some details that compare one to the other. But that's not what happens. Instead, what she has is a list of facts about Big Brother. Locked up a bunch of people in a house, forced the audience to watch them bickering, the contestants were bored, they fought all the time. She repeats herself a lot. She says bicker and fight over and over again. She says locked up in a house more than one time. So it's just a list of things that happened on Big Brother. Survivor had a cash, so now she's jumped back to Survivor. Survivor had a cash prize. But the cash prize wasn't large enough. Well, whose cash prize? Survivor's or Big Brother's? Which one wasn't large enough? I'm a little confused. We didn't choose favorites. Does she mean the audience? Who does she mean? Because the players weren't up against anything except fighting off weekends of boredom. I assume she's talking about Big Brother, but I'm not sure because she keeps switching back and forth, right? So one of the things I want you to notice is this second paragraph looks a lot shorter than the first one, doesn't it? But her sentences are more organized. She stops doing this thing where she flips back and forth out of context, and instead she uses signal words to tell you where she's going. So here's a really great example. In one of the sentences in the revised paragraph, she says, contestants were expelled by a viewer phone poll. So the poll gave them no motive to scheme and plot allegiances the way Survivor contestants did. So as opposed to her previous paragraph where she was just listing facts about each show, this is a sentence that directly compares the two. So in Big Brother, the contestants were expelled in a certain way that gave the viewers control, meaning that there was no real scheming and plotting. But in Survivor, because they have to compete against each other and they knock each other out, they competed more and they form alliances and try to come up with ways to get the better of someone else. And so she's saying that made the show more interesting. So she still talks about the fighting and bickering, but instead of just repeating that fact over and over again, she makes it more relevant by mentioning it in direct comparison to Survivor. She's showing me why that was sucky, why she didn't like it, and why she liked what Survivor did better. Another beautiful, beautiful thing that I wanted to show you all about this revision is the transition phrase. So transitions are something you're going to hear a lot about. When we talk about revising essays, we're going to talk about transition sentences. But right now, because I'm talking to you on a paragraph level, I want to talk about transition phrases. Transition phrases are little words that let your reader know how two sentences relate to each other. So remember I said that thing about that first draft of the paragraph feels like a list of facts? I, as the reader, need you to tell me what to do with all of those facts, right? Otherwise, it just feels like you're throwing information at me, and that's a lot of work. I'm too lazy. I don't want to do all that work. I want you to tell me what to think about all that information. And so you need words that indicate how two ideas are connected. So here she says, she gives us that point about the comparison between Big Brother and Survivor, and then she says, in fact, the contestants had little to do except bicker and fight. So what she's doing is telling me, by using that phrase, in fact, she shows me that the second sentence is going to build upon and emphasize the claims from the first sentence. So say that I said to you, I got in a fight with my mom today. You could picture all kinds of different fights, right? But probably what you're going to picture is the average argument. But let's say instead I said, I got in a fight with my mom today. In fact, it was such a bad fight that she threw me out of the house. Isn't that a lot worse? And it's also a lot more specific. You now have more information about that situation. So that's what these little signal or transition phrases can do for you, is they can provide you additional information and show you how that information is connected. If I put but here instead of in fact, it totally changes the meaning. But implies that the two facts are contradictory to one another. I had a fight with my mom today, but we made up quickly, right? So the first sentence sounds like it's going one direction, and then I throw that but in to tell you this is not going to be what you expect. In reality, it was something else. I like it when it rains, but not when it rains 20 inches. Okay, so it's contradictory. So those little phrases, try to throw some things like that in to help show how your sentences are connected to one another, to really give your reader some guidance for how to interpret the information that you've included. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is, we've already talked about this, that her concluding sentence does a lot better job of summarizing the central argument of the paragraph in her revised version. If you look at her first draft paragraph, her concluding sentence is just another fact about Big Brother. It says, but Big Brother had the prize component, and it took away the housemates' access to the outside world. Well, this paragraph's supposed to be about a comparison between Big Brother and Survivor, and specifically it's supposed to show me how great Survivor was. But that concluding sentence doesn't do any of that, right? So it doesn't tie together all the threads of the paragraph. So remember that thing I told you about, you have to guide your reader? You have to show your reader how your ideas are connected. That means that your concluding sentence is just like the conclusion to an essay. It does the same job. It needs to tie everything together and show me what I'm supposed to get out of that paragraph. So her new concluding sentence says, in the end, Big Brother was simply not interesting. That does a much better job. It's a shorter sentence, but it brings everything together and it tells me, okay, reader, all this information that I've just given you, what I want you to understand from that is that Big Brother was a crappy show. And it was crappy specifically because it wasn't interesting. You want to know why it wasn't interesting? Go back and read that paragraph, because that's where I explain it. So her concluding sentence is much, much better. So those are some of the things that I wanted to point out to you about how she helps to modify her paragraph, how those changes are beneficial to understanding the meaning that she's trying to convey. And it's also about the power of words, you guys. I'm such a dork about this, but this example of using in fact, look how much those two little words change the meaning of that section. Small changes in wording can make a really big difference. And so that's another thing that I want you to pay attention to as you're doing your revisions. I gave you the example of, she says the phrase in the initial paragraph, she says the phrase bickering and fighting over and over and over again. After a while, I hear it so much that I'm immune to it. Try to change up your language a little bit so that you're not doing that to the reader. So that's everything for this week. I hope that that example helped to get you on board a little bit and helped you to understand the assignments for this week. All right, thank you guys.